Welcome to Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into SST on Apple Podcast app, Spotify, and on YouTube. And we're back here right now. Solo pod, just me and you listening to talk about the New York Knicks, obviously. The Knicks stay alive in the Game 5 victory over the Miami Heat at home. It was a tough game to watch, to say the least. It was not exactly a walk in the park. It was quite stressful for all Knicks fans involved. And frankly, almost all these games have been quite stressful other than the big-time blowout in Game 3 where the Knicks lost by a lot, right? So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the details. We're going to talk about Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson, the Heat and what they're doing, the trends that I'm seeing throughout these games in the series here, because there's a lot of narratives out there about what's taking place with the Heat and the Knicks in this series, and not all of the numbers exactly add up to those narratives right now, but the eye test can tell you a different story, right? So we're going to try to sift through all of that. We're going to try to predict a little bit about what we could see in Game 6 and hopefully a Game 7 perhaps, and we're going to talk about this series at large and obviously spend some time on Game 5. At the end here, I'm going to throw a couple thoughts in about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, because I got thoughts and I got feelings. Feelings that went through a roller coaster, to say the least. And if you haven't seen the movie yet, don't worry, I ain't going to spoil anything right now. I'm going to talk about that at the end. So when we get there, I will remind you again, if you have not seen it, to leave and come back another time after you saw it so you can enjoy the thoughts I have, or maybe not enjoy them. I don't know. That's up to you to decide. I just have the thoughts. But we're going to talk about the Knicks first and foremost. But before we get to that, just got to talk about two things really fast. First thing is not personal. Second thing's personal. The Mets and the Yankees are playing baseball right now. And I don't know about you guys. I know that there are people out there who kind of watch like every Mets game, every Yankees game, no matter what. Even if they're dual screening, maybe they're on the phone with the Mets and the Yankees, or Knicks on the big screen, or vice versa, NBA playoffs. I don't know what you guys do, right? But personally, and maybe it's because the Mets have been quite bad and the Yankees have been quite bad, I haven't noticed baseball since the NBA playoffs started. I really haven't. I mean, I've been keeping up with the Mets scores and box scores and noticing that Beatty's on a nice little uptick and he's doing some things. And Alvarez hit a home run the other day, and they finally got a win with Verlander on the bump against the Reds, which is pathetic, 2-1. I mean, seriously, right? But I don't know. I'm just curious. I want to throw that out there to you guys because I don't know what everyone else is doing all the time. I know what my friends are doing. I know what some people on Twitter are doing. Twitter seems to be obsessed with NBA playoffs, but that's also my Twitter, right? So I don't know what your thing is about, and I'm just curious. So if you have thoughts about that, if you're watching it all, doing it all, good for you. I can't handle it, because I love the NBA playoffs. And I'm watching Nuggets Suns, even though it's a 15-point game, all the way down the stretch in the fourth quarter. If I wasn't recording this podcast right now, I'd be tapped into Lakers Warriors in the second half right now, even though the Warriors were up big at halftime. Like, that's just what I do. And I'm enjoying every minute of it, except for the Knicks stuff, which is just so stressful. But that's okay. We're still enjoying it as much as we possibly can. So let me know, Subway Sports Talk, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, wherever, in the YouTube comments, tell me what you're doing as a sports fan right now. Are you paying attention to New York baseball at all? If you are, how are you doing it? Or are you just not an NBA fan? Because if you're not, then that makes perfect sense, right? But the baseball in New York has been bleak, to say the least. And I think there are brighter days ahead, and we have more time in the future to like deep dive what's happening here with the Mets and the Yankees. But there is time for them to get healthier. The pitching staff for the Mets has been so injured. The hitting for the Yankees has not been very good, but there's time and there's hope in some ways. I don't know. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't really even know because I haven't been watching that much, and that's just me being honest. So I'm not going to come here and talk about the Mets like I know exactly what's going on. Second thing, personal, little update for you guys out there, Subway Sports Talk listeners, Peter Kennedy listeners, that's me. Just a little personal update. Only got one episode in last week with my guy Don Wagenblast early in the week. It was a big week for me last week, guys. And I've been talking to a lot of you who are listening for some years now. Maybe some people listening have been listening for like 4 or 5 years. I don't know, maybe. And you listened before it was even called Subway Sports Talk. And if that's the case, thank you, first and foremost. You've been with me here for a long time. And a lot of my friends and a lot of people I love talking to on this very podcast. So I feel like I deserve to tell you guys this. Your boy got engaged this last weekend. Your boy is officially engaged to a lovely woman who does not wake up when I do my podcast in the other room because I got some soundproofing on the wall. And hopefully I don't get too loud and too worked about the Knicks to wake her up while she sleeps. But I love her very much. I just wanted to put that out there, Amanda. Love her. Shout out to her. Shout out to y'all for listening. And that's frankly why the social media was a little bit down last week. Only one episode last week because your boy had other stuff on his mind. It was NBA playoffs and not messing up the plan on Friday night to ask that big question, which went really well. So shout out to her. Shout out to y'all. Just want to give you guys that update. So now it's time to talk about the New York Knicks. And let's talk about this series, man. We're going to start here with Game 5, and I'm going to dive into more trends as we kind of move on here. Game 5 was a whirlwind. I mean, the text messages that were sent between my group chats, which there's multiple moving at once, I couldn't even keep up with who was who. But the text messages that were getting sent in that first quarter were dark. It was not good. We were not in a good place. We're not having a good time. I actually tweeted out right at the end of the first quarter, somebody let the Knicks know that they have a game tonight. And within 2 minutes of the second quarter, I was able to tweet out, thank you to that person who let the Knicks know that they have a game tonight. Because they showed up in that second quarter. And that was really their quarter. I mean, they played pretty well in the third. They still won the third quarter. But the second quarter set the tone and made this game a game again. And it did feel like, in some ways, that there was one kind of aspect of the game that started going in their favor. And it wasn't just the shots that they were hitting, because they did start hitting some shots, but they got a lot of calls. In Game 5, the New York Knicks shot 21 more free throws than the Miami Heat. Now, you can mention, of course, that they played a little hack-a-mitch, which added to those totals. They fouled a couple more times at the end to add to those totals. But the Knicks shot 40 free throws in Game 5 to the Heat's 19. Just to go through the games in the past, they were both in the mid-low 20s in Game 4. We had 20 and 22 for the Knicks in Game 3, 31 for the Heat in Game 3. So the Heat had the big advantage there, and that's kind of how it felt a little bit throughout the series, but that's not necessarily true. The Heat had 17 in Game 2. That was without Jimmy Butler. The Knicks had 30. That was a Knicks win. And in Game 1, the Heat had 29 free throws, and the Knicks had just 20. And that's one of two trends that I find very interesting here, because the winners of each game to this point are the teams that have more free throws taken. Actually, not true. In Game 4, I apologize. 2 more free throws by the Knicks, and they lost. But that was close, 24-22. Every time there's been a big disparity in free throws, that has been the deciding factor. And that's discouraging to me as a fan. That is discouraging as a Knicks fan, specifically. Because as much as the shots fell, and the Knicks shot pretty well, 38% from 3 here in Game 5, while the Heat shot 13 of 43. They took 9 more attempts and made the same amount as the Knicks at 30%. That was a big difference, obviously. But the Knicks had 13 more points at the free throw line as well in this game. So with all the positivity that I felt in quarter number 2, and then quarter number 3, and then even, quarter number 4 is pretty stressful, to be honest, but, we still went away with it and won by 9. That's good. It wasn't a 9-point game in reality. It was a lot closer than that, but, Knicks win by 9. I don't feel super encouraged by the way in which they took over that game moving forward. Because you look at this series and you think about why the Heat have had the upper hand to this point. It's because the Heat are doing to the Knicks exactly what the Knicks did to the Cavs in series number 1. The Knicks out-hustled them. They out-manned them. They out-schemed them. They took advantage of the other team's disadvantages. And that's what the Heat have been doing a lot of this series here. They've been out-manning them with a deeper team-oriented style. They've been out-hustling them, hitting the glass very hard, seemingly hitting glass in key moments with the offensive rebounds. Because if you had a guess, right, if you were just sitting there at home or in your car listening to this right now, and I asked you, how has the offensive rebound disparity looked throughout this series? Your first thought's going to be, the Heat are running away with that category. They're running away with it, obviously. The Heat have been dominating the offensive glass. It's not actually the case. Now, we do know in game 4, that fourth quarter, they went off with 7 offensive rebounds to the Knicks 0. They won that battle 13-8. In game 3, offensive rebounds were 14-13 in favor of the Knicks. In game 2, offensive rebounds were 11. Oh, I lost my page here. 11 to something close here. What happened there? That's weird. 11 to whatever. It doesn't matter. And then in game 1, the Knicks won the offensive rebounding battle again, 12-10. So it was really just that fourth quarter in game 4 that created this narrative in all of our heads here that made us think that the Knicks really have been getting outmanned on the offensive glass like crazy. But again, it's not the case. It's not true. It's been in key moments that they've been making those big-time hustle plays. And it feels like, based off of our emotions in these losses, that that's been the deciding factor. But it hasn't actually been the case. So what has been the big difference? And to me, it's been more so a stagnation offensively for the Knicks, reliant too much on Brunson, Randle, and Barrett to do things by themselves. Because what didn't happen in series number 1 for the Knicks against the Cavaliers is that those guys weren't necessarily doing things by themselves all the time. And just to clean that up, in game 2, the Knicks were 14 offensive rebounds to the Heat 11. So again, the Knicks won that game 2 matchup with offensive rebounds. But the way the Heat have been attacking this team and attacking the Knicks defense has been balanced. Obviously, there's a heavy dosage of Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. But even the way in which they get those shots and the way that Jimmy Butler is consistently keeping the defense on its heels and keeping his teammates involved is just a bit different from what the Knicks have been doing. Brunson's been fantastic in a number of these games. He's putting up buckets a lot of these games. He just had 38. We watched it. It was amazing. Barrett has played some really good games. Randle was the scapegoat of game 4. Rightfully so. He played poor. He played very poor, even though his shooting numbers were relatively efficient at a number of 8 for 13, 20 points. But if you watch that game with the 6 turnovers, the 6 fouls, and that fourth quarter where they couldn't get a damn rebound, the Heat got 9 more shot attempts up than the New York Knicks and hit 4 more threes. That was the difference. It's because they attacked from more angles with more consistency and more tenacity. It's not just rebounds. It's not just Jimmy Butler. It is the team orientation that the Heat are coming out with consistently in this series that the Knicks finally came out with again here in Game 5. Because again, in that second quarter, when things started going right, what was the spark plug? It was a 3 from Quentin Grimes. It was an alley-oop to Obi Toppin, and that was his only points of the game. That was his only bucket of the entire game. His dunk on the alley-oop and 2 missed threes. That's all he did, Obi Toppin. But that moment in quarter number 2 really made a difference. That's the type of thing they have not been able to consistently find when they need it. And that, to me, is because of the styles of the play of Randle, Barrett, and sometimes Brunson. And I don't want to be critical of Brunson because he's carried this offense in so many ways. But there's a point where, why are the Knicks not shooting well? Oh, well, that's because Grimes doesn't get a shot up for a quarter, and then he gets a ball thrown to him in the corner with 4 seconds left on the shot clock. Obi Toppin comes in for 12 minutes a game, and he gets 2 spot-up threes with no rhythm. Julius Randle, when he's ball stopping, Knicks fans know how frustrating that is. It was, excuse me, it was brutal in Game 4 when they couldn't get anything moving on offense, and the turnovers. I mean, 6 turnovers and 6 personal fouls from Julius Randle. They had 16 turnovers as a team on the game. That's not going to do it against a team that's this disciplined with the amount of shooters that they have. And now, granted, coming into this series, I didn't think the Heat had this type of shooting in them. I had no clue. I had no reason to believe they were going to continue to shoot the way they did in Series 1. They were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league in the regular season. Duncan Robinson was unplayable in the regular season. So why is it working now? It's because of the pressure that Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and even a bit Caleb Martin or Cody. Is it Cody or Caleb? What Martin? The Martin on the Heat. Whatever Martin is on the Heat. Him, Kyle Lowry, Gabe Vincent. They're creating some pressure, and they're allowing the Struces to get their games. They're allowing Duncan Robinson to get these shots off, and he's hitting them. It's because of the consistent attacking and the consistent looks that these guys are getting. That's not been the case so far for the New York Knicks. And now tonight, Randle played a lot better, and he didn't force on offense. He did still have 4 turnovers. A couple of them were not very good, but he actually took what was given to him more, and I think a part of it, from what I saw, was a little bit of Brunson saying, all right, Randle, I see you calling for this. I'm going to give you yours every once in a while, but we got to do what we got to do here. And it came back to Brunson and Barrett really taking control of the game and finding Mitch Robinson for a couple big shots, finding Quentin Grimes for some big shots. He hit 2 threes. You know, Brunson and Barrett, they shot combined just 7 of 18 from 3. Nothing crazy, nothing to write home about, but they hit some big shots, and they consistently were finding one another. Brunson was getting to the free throw line. I don't know if that was enough in this game to make me feel really confident moving forward into Game 6, because so much of it came down to those foul calls. And that's something that doesn't necessarily translate and move forward game to game, as we've seen. And I'm hoping that over time here in this series, that Kyle Lowry's antics are getting a little bit more frustrating for the referees. Because watching him as a Knicks fan, I'll tell you what, I don't hate many players in this league, but I hated Kyle Lowry tonight. He was so frustrating to watch. He's so physical and annoying and somewhat dirty in a way where, you know, it's not like he's trying to hurt people, but he's always baiting for fouls. He's always reaching for this and pushing for that. And tonight, thankfully, the Knicks got a lot of those calls. And he fouled out, and that was huge because he was playing damn well. And he was one of those guys that was making me nervous every time he shot the ball, too. I mean, Kyle Lowry, he only shot eight threes tonight. It felt like he hit more than 2, didn't it? They were big moments on the comeback. And his foul saved the Knicks tonight. They really did. I mean, Duncan Robinson alone, 5 for 10 from 3. He was a scary man to watch because he was getting open, and it was all because of the pressure created by Jimmy and Bam. I mean, down the stretch of the fourth quarter, you saw the play. It was over and over and over again. Jimmy Butler at the top of the key. Bam Adebayo comes in for the first screen, and Duncan Robinson's right behind him for the second screen. And every time I'm yelling at the TV, stay near Duncan Robinson. Stay near him. That was their ticket. Butler wasn't taking a lot of shots. My man took 12 shots in a game like this. Now, granted, he got to the free throw line 11 times, so if you added those into the field goal attempts, sure, yeah, he got more attempts up than just 12. But he wasn't looking for the shot and wasn't finding the shot. So maybe I'm wrong here. And maybe leaving Duncan Robinson to say, hey, go ahead, try to shoot 50%. Maybe that's a game plan. Maybe that's something that's sustainable and that's going to work. And you're just leaving it up to Duncan Robinson's hands to be the player he was during the regular season, which, again, was basically unplayable. And he was looked at as one of the worst contracts in the league during this regular season. And now in the playoffs, he's a dude again? 17 points? What? So that's a catch-22 to me. It's a catch-22. Maybe the right call is to just attack Butler, not let him get good shots off, make him work super hard for his buckets, and hold him to 20, and say, hey, if Martin, Lowry, and Duncan Robinson shoot 48% from 3, what are we going to do? We're going to let Jimmy beat us by himself? Because he could do that too. He can do it too. He did it against the Bucks. He's done it against us already in this series. So I don't necessarily know. I just know that in the fourth quarter, I was uncomfortable watching that team play, and it felt like if Mitch Robinson didn't hit those clutch free throws in the fourth quarter, and a couple balls didn't break in the right way, and Grimes didn't get that big steal after he banged up his knee, that this game could have went a very different direction, and we'd be having a very different tone on this podcast. Not that my tone's been super positive anyway, because it hasn't. And I don't know if you feel that way as a Knicks fan after you're watching that game, that you walk away saying, I didn't love that. I don't feel like we have a ton of momentum going into this next game. I mean, Quentin Grimes and Jalen Brunson didn't come off the floor. Is that good Tibbs or bad Tibbs? I don't know. Game 5, it was good Tibbs. But going into Game 5, I was thinking we are going to need McBride to hit some shots. We're going to need the Josh Hart bench energy insertion that we are hoping for every single game. Obviously, the foul trouble kept him out of it a lot. Only played 9 minutes. I think you could find a positive in that. I think you could find some sort of solace that they can do it without the strength in numbers, without the quickly because he's hurt, without the top and burst outside of the one alley-oop dunk, without Hartenstein doing anything extra special other than, some decent bench minutes. He played the most bench minutes by a long shot. Without Hart doing anything special. Maybe that's a positive. But all of it kind of comes back to this one thing. And it's RJ Barrett and Julius Randle. We've gotten a lot of good RJ Barrett lately. And it seems like he's turned a corner. Now, he only had 2 assists in this Game 5. But watching him play over the second portion of the Cavs series and basically mostly throughout this series against the Heat, you feel a lot more comfortable with what RJ Barrett's doing. I use this term over and over again on the pod from last Monday. Playing aggressive in rhythm. That's the RJ Barrett that we love. That's the RJ Barrett that we need. You do not need the RJ Barrett who's saying to himself, I am him. I can do this. I will score the points. I got this, guys. Don't worry. That's not the RJ Barrett we need. But more importantly, that is not the Julius Randle we need. Somehow, Julius Randle had a very similar stat line in Game 4 and Game 5. Game 4, 8 for 13, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 6 turnovers, 6 fouls. Not good. And you watch that game, eye test tells you way worse than those numbers because those numbers aren't that bad. The turnovers are bad. The rest of the numbers, not bad. Pretty good, actually. Quite efficient. Didn't take too many shots. Didn't force too much. Except he did because of the turnovers and the bad plays and the stagnation. And in this game, it felt a lot different. Is it as simple as him hitting 4 threes in Game 5 versus only hitting 1 in Game 4? Is it that simple? Is it as simple as his shots going in or not? I don't think it necessarily is. Because watching Game 5 and watching Game 4, obviously, subliminally, you just feel better when some of the shots fall. But I saw the way in which he attacked in Game 5 and the way in which he kind of let the game come to him a little bit more. Not always, but a little bit more throughout the game. That was a lot more encouraging to me. And the 5 assists is a lot more encouraging to me. I always said this about RJ Barrett, and maybe I'm wrong. The ticket to RJ Barrett being looked at as a true, solid number 2/number 3 starter, wherever you want to slide him in, is not to be a 27-point per game guy. I don't think he's going to ever be efficient enough. I don't ever think he's going to be the type of guy you want taking 22 shots a game. I always looked at him as the guy who, if he can score 20 on relative efficiency and get his guys involved and be that creator off the dribble, off the catch, closeouts, attacking them, that's the guy who becomes, wow, wouldn't you love to have an RJ Barrett on your team? That's the dude who I always have looked at and said, that's who he needs to be. And even though he only had 2 assists in this game here, he took 17 shots, just under 50% from the field. I am seeing more of that RJ Barrett, especially in big moments, than we ever have before. I mean, that play he made to dump around to Mitchell Robinson for the wide open dunk was enormous. And that's a moment where you see multiple defenders saying, we are now attacking him because we know this dude. And he's going to try to get to his left and put up a layup. That's not a great look for him. Even though he can make it, even though he does make it sometimes, the defense will take him taking a doubly contested layup over the dump around pass to Mitchell Robinson, Hartenstein, Julius Randle, Obi Toppin, whoever it may be. When he's making those passes in fourth quarters and big moments, that's how you know he's clicking. Again, only 2 assists in Game 5. Those assists were huge. Those passes are huge. And frankly, the one that he didn't pass ended up being a great play because Jimmy Butler, again, decided, looking at RJ Barrett, and said, this dude's going to shoot this. I'm going to make it harder on him, and I'm now going to forget about Isaiah Hartenstein behind me for the easy putback. That ended up being a great decision. And frankly, with the shot clock running down, it was probably the right decision. It might not have been enough time to get the pass off, right? So that worked out well. Could have made it, and the rebound was likely getting to Hartenstein. Beautiful. But it comes down to his understanding. It comes down to his demeanor and his calmness on the court. Randle and Barrett, the two guys who are the most frustrating people on this team, often end up being the do-or-die players on this team, the people who do change the outcomes for this team. And I'm telling you, if Randle's at 5+ assists, if Randle's not taking 24 shots on inefficient shooting, their chances of winning go up, up, up. Because all Brunson has shown us is efficiency. All Brunson has shown us is his opportunities to get balls in the hoop, man. It's what he's been doing all playoffs. It's what he's done all year, frankly. He's the guy who I'm least worried about. Now, sometimes the double teams get a little scary on him. Yeah, but, happens to everybody. He does a pretty good job getting out of them for the most part. Sometimes still frustrates me as he goes a little too slow up the court and waits too long to get into the offense. That could be a little frustrating. But we know what he kind of delivers every single night. And he's been doing it. So you talk about Brunson being the key to victory. In a way, he becomes secondary because his floor has become so high and because his decision-making has been so damn good. 38 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 turnover. That's elite. You can't expect that every game, but what you can expect is 25, and what rebounds are kind of random for him a little bit, but 25 and 7 with 1 or 2 turnovers and pretty efficient shooting. Right? Like, the free throws were really what put him over tonight. He had 10 free throws out of 12. That got him to 38, right? So Brunson's going to do that to an extent. Maybe not 38, but a good number. The thing that changes the Knicks' outcome are the people who scare us the most. And they can show up in Game 6 and do more of what they did tonight and hit some shots. And Julius Randle can go 4 of 7 again from 3. And Barrett can make big plays attacking the rim and hit a couple jumpers. That can happen, and that is the ticket at this point. I thought it was going to be strength in numbers going into the series. Based off how this Heat team plays defense and attacks the glass and plays as a team, those opportunities for the others, even though Quickly's hurt right now, but for the other guys who get in here and there, not going to be as open, right? Especially for Hart, especially for Grimes, especially for if Quickly was back, or even Toppin. Because the Cavs may have had the best defense in the league all season, but we knew what they were doing. Those guards and Isaac Okoro, they funneled everything at the bigs all year long. And the Knicks with Brunson and Barrett and Hart and even Grimes sometimes, they were able to take advantage of those bigs being bigs and stuck under the rim. Bam Adebayo don't play that. He's a little bit more frisky in there. He's a little bit more versatile defensively there. Jimmy Butler don't play that. These other dudes, Kyle Lowry, Martin, even Duncan Robinson, he's long and he's running around. He's doing something on defense. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, these guys are all solid defenders. There's no putting Bam Adebayo on an island and putting Zeller on an island because there's much better perimeter defense on the Heat. So I thought it was strength in numbers coming into the series. Turns out the strength is in the top 3. It's in those dogs. And Game 6 will come down to Barrett and Randle. I could almost guarantee that. I can't guarantee who's going to get more free throws. I can't guarantee who's going to get more offensive rebounds, though the Knicks' toughness was definitely there in Game 5. They've gotten offensive rebounds all series. It doesn't feel like they have, but I told you the numbers before. They're winning that battle for the most part this series. Maybe not all the time in key moments, but generally, they're holding up in that regard. It comes down to Barrett and Randle's decision-making, shot efficiency, willingness to get their teammates involved, and willingness to not have to be the hero. It's not intuitive. It doesn't make sense at face value. You're asking them to be heroes without being the hero. And if that makes sense to you, you're seeing what I'm seeing when you watch this Knicks team. The heroes can't be the hero. Barrett and Randle have to show up in Game 6. Brunson's going to show up. Barrett and Randle have to do something, and it doesn't have to be 18 out of 27 shots. That's not realistic for them right now. They're not getting consistent enough good looks because of the way this Heat team plays defense. But if they play aggressive in rhythm and keep other folks involved and get Hartenstein his easy buckets and Mitch Robinson easy buckets and Toppin a few easy buckets, that's a ticket right there. That's what I got on the Knicks. From a prediction standpoint, Heat are going to be favored in Game 6, obviously going back to Miami. That's just obvious, right? They're going to be the favorite. I don't know, 4 points, 3.5 points, 4.5 probably tops in my opinion. It's probably out already. I'm not going to check. It's fine. Knicks can win this game. The Knicks definitely can win this game, but they have to play as a unit. They have to use each other's strengths. They cannot allow the Heat to make them one-dimensional, to just pray that they shoot 42% from three. That's not good enough against a team like this that's this well coached. They got to play as a team. I say the Knicks make it to Game 7. That's my take. All right, let's talk about Guardians of the Galaxy for a hot second here. Just for a minute. Short-ish pod to hear tonight. Solo. We're at 30 minutes or so right now. And I just got to talk about the Guardians of the Galaxy. So again, I mentioned this in the open. If you haven't watched it yet, you could leave right now, giving you a second to get out. If you're in your car, don't crash. Spoiler alert. That's it. No more time for you. That movie was awesome. That movie was freaking awesome. And I just got to say a couple things. A lot of people in this whole MCU world nowadays who kind of live and die by every moment, by every show that comes out, by every little frame within every single movie. I don't know if they're seeing things right. Because if you left that movie and didn't have an incredible experience, I don't know what to tell you. Because I haven't seen a movie that moved me the way that movie did, that made me laugh the way that movie did, and was absolutely a spectacle from an action and fighting standpoint that movie accomplished. I mean, that scene in the hallway towards the end, and again, like, spoilers, get the hell out of here if you haven't watched this shit. That scene in the hallway at the end was one of the more impressive fight scenes that I've seen in the MCU. Just period. No caveat. No last 3 years. Not since Endgame. That's one of the most impressive fight scenes. One of the most beautiful fight scenes that I've watched in this freaking universe. In the entirety. There's some incredible moments, obviously, in Civil War. There's incredible moments in all the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Obviously, the Infinity War and Endgame saga, that whole thing was incredible. Those scenes were just otherworldly. That little scene right there in one hallway was so amazing to watch, so impressive to watch. I loved it. And that doesn't scratch the surface of why this movie was so good. The whole story of Rocket, the whole come up of finally learning about his backstory. And now some people watch trailers and read forums and read all these things and YouTube videos. I do some of that stuff. You get a little inkling from those things about the High Evolutionary and what it's all about and what this might mean for Rocket. And from the trailers, you see that he's getting, operated on as a young person, as a young raccoon being, sentient being, whatever you want to call Rocket at that point. He's getting operated on. It's going to be intense. It's going to be sad. And knowing that, expecting to be a little heartbroken at different points in this film, you could not expect to feel the way you did about all of those characters and all of their arcs and the amount of time that we've spent with those people to have a payoff that hit on every single note throughout this movie was insane. And I was sad and I was on the verge of tears like 4 different times in that damn movie. I was like an emotional wreck at the end of that movie. And to the people who were doing predictions and whatnot, which I didn't really get a chance to do, we would have done the same thing. We would have said, Alec, Andrew, if we talked about the three of us, all right, someone's dying in this thing. Who's going to die, right? Like, who's dying? You know, Drax's contract or Dave Bautista's contract's up. Is Quill coming back? You know, is Pratt done with the MCU? We know Gamora and Zoe Saldana, they're done, right? Like, who's dying? Someone's dying. The way that they made you feel that everyone could have died and nobody did, in so many other movies would have been a disappointment. But maybe it's because of the anticipation of death in this film that led to the survival to be so special. But it wasn't really about that, was it? Right? It was about the growth in which these characters all had simultaneously, with each other, without each other. To see Rocket's backstory and understand why he was so good at escaping prisons and situations, and so good at using rockets and using spaceships and weaponry. To understand where that all came from pain and his letdown of thinking he disappointed his only friends in this world, the only people in this world that he actually knew. It makes you realize the anger, the dick swinging between Rocket and Quill all along, it came from this deeper place. And Star-Lord never going back to Earth to face his family and meet his family and figure out who he was and what he wanted and what he should be doing in life. You know, they've done a lot of stuff together, right? The Guardians of the Galaxy, they saved the galaxy, right? They did the thing with Ronan, incredible. They took out Ego, incredible. I ranked the movies 3, 1, 2 in that order. I think 3 is the swan song that you could have never even imagined that worked out incredibly well. 1 is legendary in its own right, and I rewatched it recently. It's fantastic. Never been a huge fan of 2, but still decent, still solid. They saved the galaxy in ways in number 1. They saved the galaxies in ways number 2. And in fact, in Guardians of the Galaxy number 3, they saved portions of it. They saved these subsets of galaxies or planets or whatever you want to say from the high evolutionary of trying something out and then killing everybody and then starting again and then killing everybody and starting again. All right. So there was saving that happened, even though Counter Earth, sorry, see you later, right? That didn't make it. They did not make it. But this wasn't about saving the galaxy at all. It was about each of them saving themselves and from each other and always being there when the things got awry. Even like from Mantis and Drax, like them kind of discovering and letting their frustrations out to circle back and figure out what they were supposed to be doing, all through the lens of their friend and their family of Rocket. Seeing what he went through to be who he is today, it allowed them to look at their own past and their own situations and stories and look at it from a completely new perspective. Yeah, this movie could have done a lot of stuff different. They could have had Star-Lord and Gamora fall in love. They could have had Nebula save the day, as she had an arc that could have led right there. And in a lot of ways, she did. They could have had a Drax amazing fight scene that ended his arc and killed him off in a beautiful, heroic way where he saved some of the Guardians. They could have had Mantis take over somebody like the High Evolutionary or some monsters to save the day for her true heroic moment. But all of their heroic moments was actually just in discovery, was actually in just realizing that them sticking together all this time, they were all leaning on each other, whether they realized it or not. And the true win of this movie was all of them allowing themselves to lean on themselves for once, to understand they had this family with them, but to know that they can trust themselves first and love themselves. I mean, that line that Mantis hit when they're talking, she's talking to Nebula and Drax is there, kind of being an idiot, then kind of getting upset because they're talking a lot of smack about Drax and how he's an idiot. And Mantis starts going off on Nebula. You're always so mad. You don't get it. you're this and that, and everybody in this damn group is this and that. And Drax is the only person here who doesn't hate himself. And that's why we love him. Man. Wow. Because all these characters, man, they got bravado, they got skills, they got incredible abilities and smarts to take advantage of crazy situations, but they've never had love for themselves. They've never had any of that. It's always been a lot of hate for themselves and false bravado and just getting along and running from the bad guy and attacking some other bad guys in their way. And then when they had no choice, they turn around and say, let's get this guy. When Rocket came out of there and they had their chance to escape, when Mantis comes out with Drax and Nebula on those big monster things and they break out, yo, we can get out of here right now. And Rocket says, I'm done running. Turns out, and right there, he became the captain. You saw it. The way they shot the scene. Rocket turns and said, I'm done running. Goes right in there to face the High Evolutionary. Quill turns and walks right behind him. Groot, Mantis, Drax, Nebula, and Gamora, reluctantly, who had her own beautiful arc. The new Gamora, the Ravager Gamora. Man, I can go on for this movie, man. I could really do it. And there's nits to pick, sure. Did I love that Groot got a little extra Vin Diesel-y with his voice in this movie? Like, no, I didn't. It was a little weird. I never got why it was Vin Diesel. Good for him for getting a bag, I guess. I don't know. It got a little too Vin Diesel-y for me. Sure, I don't know. Was Adam Warlock a little bit lame? Yes, but he also nailed that role to a T and has a great opportunity to grow because he was let out of his cocoon too early. Whatever. Was that perfect? Probably not. Was the first 30 minutes of the movie a little bit disjointed, a little bit wobbly on where they were going? Yeah, sure, a little bit. And guess what? By the hour point of that movie, your boy was locked. Your boy was emotional. Your boy felt every bounce, every punch, every sting, emotional, physical, and beyond. James Gunn, man, tip my freaking cap to him and all the actors. That movie was off the charts. I hope you felt the same. And so much gets put into these MCU movies. And, I hardly even talked about Lila and Teefs and Floor, who, yeah, those two characters were kind of hideous. But that made it a little beautiful in a way, right? Because it really accentuated the pain that Rocket felt. He was the lucky one. And yet he was the one that felt the most burden out of anybody. He was the one who was the proper experiment, whose brain turned out right, that drove the High Evolutionary insane. The High Evolutionary was terrible, right? He wanted to try to make the perfect society. He failed. He killed everybody. Tried again, failed, killed everybody. Tried. But what really drove him mad wasn't that he wasn't finding perfection. He was okay with continuing to try and continuing to try. What drove him truly mad is that one of his throwaway experiments, 89P13, bested him and figured something out that he couldn't. Multiple things, actually. That's what drove him insane. And all along, Rocket thought he was an accident. Rocket thought he was a burden and a monster. And all along, he was the one who was the luckiest out of everybody there. And it was kind of his story, as they alluded to. Not that subtly, which was nice in a way. That's it, man. That movie hit. Movie hit hard. If you watch that thing and didn't get emotional, you got other things to check out with you. I'm telling you, man. You don't even have to be an animal lover to feel the pain in those little guys. That was just some serious, gut-wrenching, spectacular action, emotional characterizations, all blended into one beautiful film that I am thrilled with. Fantastic. Many people want to say right away, best movie from Endgame. Best Guardians movie. Not as good as Guardians 1. Not that great. There was a couple things I didn't like. Sure. There's a couple things you don't like about every movie. But you can't deny how you feel when you watch it. And if while you're watching it, you don't care about nitpick 1, 2, and 3, let's go. Move on. Keep it moving. Enjoy the show. That's what I did. And I'm watching that again as soon as I can. That's all I got. Subway Sports Talk. Off the rails segment there with a little Guardians rant because I had to get that off the chest. That thing was amazing. Knicks, wouldn't say they were amazing in Game 5, but they were very good. Got the job done. Lived to see another day. We'll watch them on Friday night with great anticipation, and I'm just hoping we get a chance to watch them on Monday night as well because, boy, I don't know how many more games of this Knicks stuff that I could take from a stress standpoint. I'm happy to be here right now. I'm happy to be in the second round. They ain't dead yet. And I do believe, maybe falsely, that's not a word, I don't think, but it's okay. Maybe wrongfully, is that a word? I don't care. I think they're going to show up. I think they're going to play a real game on Friday night. I don't know if they're going to win, but I feel confident that they're going to show up with that energy that we've loved from this team all year long in that first series, in moments of this Heat series, because it feels like they've been getting abused. Not quite the case. And Barrett and Randle have a chance to right some of their wrongs and be the heroes together with their teammates to win Game 6 and go to Game 7. Subway Sports Talk, hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. That's all we got. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review on your podcast apps, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube. Like the video, drop a comment. That all means a lot to us. Don't forget to subscribe on or follow on Instagram and TikTok at Subway Sports Talk, Twitter as well. And we'll talk to you soon. I'll get back on the social grind. Fell off the TikToks and the Reels for a hot minute there, but it's okay. We have big things going on in the personal life, and I'm excited to continue to watch the NBA playoffs, get back with some MLB stuff soon enough. Maybe talk some more Marvel as we got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse coming out pretty soon. Oh, my God. It's a good time to be a sports fan. It's a good time to be a fandom fan, a fan of action movies and superhero movies and all that stuff. I'm happy to be here. So cheers to y'all. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next week.